Hello guys, welcome to my channel where stories filled with revenge, moral lessons, and love are told. Sit back, relax, and let me take you on a journey you won't forget. Don't forget to like, share with your friends, and subscribe for more stories like this. It was just after 2 in the morning when the quiet of my apartment wrapped around me like a heavy blanket. I had been working late for weeks, pushing myself beyond exhaustion, and that night I crashed so deeply that I barely stirred when my sister, Tessa, knocked on my door earlier in the evening. She'd asked if she could spend the night because she couldn't bear to be alone after another breakup. I didn't have the energy to argue or dig into details. I simply tossed her an extra blanket, told her she could sleep on the couch, and went back to my room. I remember turning over in my sleep once, hearing faint footsteps, and then slipping under again. If I had known what was happening, if I had opened my eyes just a little wider, I might have stopped her. But when you're worn down to the bone, trust is the last thing you think you'll have to protect. By morning, my phone screen was lit with alerts, emails from my bank, text notifications from my credit card company, and fraud warnings. I sat up, my heart pounding before I even understood why. Each message was more alarming than the last. Multiple transactions had gone through during the night, luxury store purchases, first-class flight tickets, hotel bookings, all totaling exactly $15,000. The limit on my black Excelsior card had been wiped clean while I was dreaming. I stumbled into the living room, phone in hand, and my stomach dropped. The blanket I'd given Tessa was folded neatly on the couch. She was gone. The front door was locked from the inside, and my wallet kept in the small zippered pouch on my work bag was open. The card slot was empty. At first, I told myself there had to be a mistake. Maybe the bank had been hacked. Maybe it was some random scammer halfway across the world. But the more I scrolled through the transaction list, the more one detail caught my attention. The charges were local for the first hour, then switched to international after the purchase of 2 first-class tickets to Tokyo. The names on the airline booking? Tessa Whitmore and our cousin, Layla Rhodes. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I called her immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. I called again. Still nothing. By the 5th call, I was no longer in shock, I was angry. Angry that she had the audacity to do this under my roof, to use my trust as her entry ticket to a crime. I drove to my parents' house, my anger only fueled by the fear that maybe I was overreacting, that maybe she'd left a note explaining something I couldn't yet see. When I walked into their kitchen, they were having breakfast like it was any other day. I asked where she was. My mother's face was calm, too calm, and she said, "Oh, she's on a short trip with Layla. Needed a little getaway after everything she's been through." It was like my brain short-circuited. I told them what had happened, my voice trembling with the need for them to believe me, to say, "That's terrible, let's call her right now." Instead, my father frowned like I'd just insulted him. "Tessa would never do that to you," he said. "You must be mistaken. Maybe you lost your card somewhere." Mistaken? The bank had records. The airline had names. I had timestamps down to the second showing the moment she'd emptied my account while I was lying 10 feet away from her. But when I showed them the proof, my mother waved her hand dismissively. "She's had a hard year, Evelyn. Don't make this about money. You've always been so strict with her." That sentence, those exact words were like acid in my chest. Strict? I'd been the one paying my own way since college, the one loaning her money when her rent was late, the one giving her rides to interviews she never followed through on. Strict didn't even begin to cover the imbalance between us. I left that morning feeling like my parents had chosen a side, and it wasn't mine. By the time I sat in my car, I knew I couldn't wait for them to see the reason. This wasn't going to be solved with polite phone calls or family mediation. I had to protect myself legally, financially, emotionally, because no one else was going to do it for me. The first thing I did was call my bank and freeze the card. Then I filed a report with the police. It felt surreal, giving them my sister's full name, explaining how she'd gotten access to my wallet, how she'd even bypassed my phone's facial recognition to silence my transaction alerts. They asked if I had any proof it was her, and I handed over everything: the airline confirmation email that listed her and Layla, the store receipts sent to my email, the timestamped transactions that matched her social media posts. And that's when it hit me, her social media. I opened her page, and there it was, a photo posted 3 hours ago from the business class lounge at Narita International Airport. Champagne in her hand, Layla grinning beside her, captions filled with hashtags like Tokyo Life and First Class Vibes. She hadn't even tried to hide it. That was the first moment I stopped feeling shocked and started feeling cold. Cold in the way that makes you see everything clearly. If she could do this to me and brag about it online, then she was counting on my silence. She was counting on me to protect her because we were family. She didn't know yet that the part of me that had always protected her had died the moment I saw that post. I started pulling every digital string I could. I called the airline to confirm the booking and the gate they had landed at. I requested IP logs from my bank that matched the purchases to my home Wi-Fi. I even contacted the luxury boutique where the first purchase was made and confirmed that security footage clearly showed her handing my card to the cashier. The officer assigned to my case said it was one of the most cut-and-dry examples of family identity theft he'd seen. But he also warned me these cases get messy. Families lie for each other. Stories get twisted. Sometimes charges get dropped because victims can't stomach the fallout. But as I sat there in that police station, watching them catalog the evidence, I felt something shift inside me. I'd spent my whole life trying to be the good daughter, the patient sister, the one who didn't cause trouble. And where had it gotten me? $15,000 in debt, betrayed in my own home, dismissed by the people who should have had my back. That night, lying in bed with my laptop open, I drafted an email to my parents. No accusations, no pleading. Just the facts. The timeline. The evidence. And one line at the end: I love you, but I will not protect her from the consequences of what she's done. When I hit send, I didn't know what would come next. All I knew was that the silence between us would be deafening, and that somewhere across the world, my sister was laughing in a hotel room bought with the last of my money. What she didn't know was that her little trip to Tokyo had just triggered the one thing she'd never seen from me before: revenge. 2 days after sending that email, I still hadn't received a reply. Not even a single line from my parents acknowledging they'd read it. It was as if they had all collectively decided that if they ignored me long enough, I would let it go. But I knew better. Silence wasn't going to erase $15,000 or the months of work it had taken me to earn it. Silence wasn't going to make me unsee the footage of my sister smiling while handing over my card to a cashier. I decided I wasn't going to wait for their acknowledgement. Instead, I focused on strengthening my case. The officer assigned to me, Detective Moore, was pragmatic but direct. If she's willing to flaunt it online, he told me, she's not thinking about the paper trail she's leaving behind. We'll use that to our advantage. So I dug deeper. I pulled every bank statement from last week, cross-referencing the purchases with Tessa's and Layla's social media activity. If they posted a photo of a sushi platter in Ginza, I would have had a matching charge from the restaurant on my statement. If they tagged themselves in a boutique in Shibuya, there was the receipt from the luxury brand showing the exact time and the store location. Detective Moore filed a formal subpoena to the airline for their check-in footage, and when it came back, there she was, my sister dragging a gleaming white suitcase, designer handbag swinging from her arm. Layla trailed behind her, sipping coffee. Both looked like they had stepped out of a travel magazine. Meanwhile, I was getting phone calls from extended family members telling me I should just let it go. My Aunt June told me, she's young, Evelyn. We've all made mistakes. Don't ruin her life over a credit card bill. It was the same script they'd always used when she messed up: minimize, excuse, deflect. But this wasn't forgetting to return a sweater or showing up late for dinner. This was calculated theft, committed while I was asleep under the same roof. When my parents finally called me, my mother's voice was laced with irritation. Do you realize how embarrassing this is for the family? You've involved the police. People are talking. I took a breath before answering. Do you realize she emptied my card and left the country with our cousin? Do you realize she used my face to bypass my phone security so she could silence the alerts? That's not just embarrassing, it's a crime. My father cut in. We'll pay you back. Just drop the charges. Don't drag this into court. I almost laughed. You don't have $15,000 lying around, and even if you did, that's not the point. She needs to face consequences. This isn't just about money anymore. That was the first time they didn't have an immediate reply. My father mumbled something about needing to think, and then they hung up. A week later, I was called into the station to view the compiled evidence package. It was airtight bank logs, IP addresses linking the purchases to my apartment Wi-Fi, timestamps matching the boutique footage, and the incriminating social media posts. The detective told me, this will be held in court. If she comes back to the country, we'll have her in custody. It wasn't long before that happened. 2.5 weeks after the theft, Tessa and Layla flew back, posting an Instagram story from the airport about reality calling. They didn't even make it past customs before the warrant triggered. I got a call from Detective Moore, she's in holding. We'll be transferring her to the county in the morning. I don't know what I expected, but walking into that holding room and seeing her sitting there, eyes red but chin lifted, was surreal. She looked at me like I was the one who'd betrayed her. You didn't have to do this, she said, voice sharp. We're sisters. I sat down across from her. Sisters don't drain each other's accounts and flee the country. Sisters don't smile in photos paid for with stolen money. She scoffed. It was just money. You make more than I do. You wouldn't even miss it if you didn't obsess over every little thing. Her words hit me like a slap. That entitlement, that certainty that I owed her something, was exactly why I was sitting there pressing charges. It's not about the money, I told her. It's about the fact that you thought you could do this and get away with it because you share my last name. For the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt cross her face. She didn't say anything else. When the court date came, my parents sat on the opposite side of the room. They didn't look at me. They didn't look at her, either. The judge laid out the charges of identity theft, credit card fraud and offered her a plea deal, probation, community service, and full restitution to be paid over 3 years. If she refused, she would face jail time. She took the deal. The restitution agreement meant I would get my money back in installments, but it also meant she would have to work, really work for the first time in years. The judge was clear. If you miss even one payment or fail to log your community service hours, the sentence will convert to jail time. Leaving that courtroom, I didn't feel victorious. I felt lighter. Lighter because I'd finally stopped carrying the weight of protecting her. Lighter because, for the first time, the consequences were hers alone to bear. My parents didn't speak to me for a month after that. And in that silence, I realized something important. Sometimes the biggest confrontation isn't in a courtroom. It's in the quiet decision to stand your ground when the people closest to you try to convince you you're wrong. So when my mother finally called, her voice hesitant, and asked if I would come to Sunday dinner, I said yes, not because I wanted to pretend everything was fine, but because I wanted them to hear, in my own words, why I had done what I did. That Sunday, I walked into their dining room with a folder of documents. I placed it on the table before anyone had the chance to make small talk. Inside was everything: receipts, photos, court papers. I looked at my father. I need you to see this, not as my parents, but as people who need to understand what really happened. We went through each piece of evidence. I answered their questions. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I just told the truth. By the time I was done, the room was quiet. My father leaned back, exhaling. My mother's hands were clasped tightly in her lap. Finally, my father said, I didn't want to believe she was capable of this. But you were right. We've been making excuses for her for too long. It wasn't an apology. But it was the first crack in the wall of denial that had stood between us for years. And for me, that was enough to know the confrontation had been worth every step. After that Sunday dinner, something shifted in the air between my parents and me. It wasn't instant forgiveness, but it was no longer outright hostility either. They seemed quieter when Tessa's name came up, almost cautious. My mother even asked how the restitution payments were going, which surprised me. I told her the truth: Tessa had made her first payment on time. It was a small amount compared to the total she owed, but it was something. Still, I wasn't naive. One on-time payment didn't erase years of enabling or undoing the betrayal. I kept my boundaries sharp. I told my parents, gently but firmly, that I didn't want Tessa in my apartment again, and that I wouldn't be discussing my finances with them anymore. They didn't argue. I think they knew they had pushed me as far as they could, and now they were trying not to push me further. Tessa, on the other hand, didn't contact me directly. Instead, I'd hear from Layla brief, awkward messages about how Tessa was trying to get her life together and didn't think I'd ever forgive her. I didn't respond. Forgiveness wasn't something I was ready to hand out just because she'd been caught. The court-ordered community service forced her into routines she'd never stuck to before. Twice a week, she worked shifts at a local shelter, cleaning, sorting donations, sometimes serving meals. It was humbling work, and though she complained about it to others, I think it chipped away at the entitlement she'd carried for so long. Meanwhile, I threw myself into my own healing. Therapy became a lifeline, a place where I could unpack not just the theft, but the years of family dynamics that had led to that moment: the favoritism, the double standards, the unspoken expectation that I would always clean up after her. My therapist helped me see that my anger wasn't just about the $15,000. It was about every time my voice had been dismissed, every time I'd been told to be the bigger person while she was shielded from consequences. I also started volunteering at a local financial literacy nonprofit, teaching workshops on credit card safety, fraud prevention, and financial boundaries. It was strange, standing in front of strangers and talking about the very thing that had caused me so much pain, but it was also empowering. My story stopped feeling like a wound and started feeling like a weapon I could use to protect others. Months passed. The restitution payments kept coming in small, steady amounts. I wasn't tracking them obsessively. The money was less important to me now than the fact that she was having to work for it. My parents began asking thoughtful questions about identity theft and financial safety, and I could tell they were starting to see the bigger picture: that this wasn't about turning on family, but about stopping a cycle before it could get worse. Then Thanksgiving arrived. I had debated skipping it, but in the end, I decided to go. It was the first time I'd see Tessa since the day in court. The moment I walked in, I felt every muscle in my body tense. She was standing by the dining table, fidgeting with a bracelet, her eyes flicking toward me and then away. Dinner was quiet at first, everyone was careful with their words. Then, just before dessert, Tessa cleared her throat. "I have something to say," she began, her voice low but steady. She looked directly at me. "I'm sorry, Evelyn. I know saying that doesn't fix what I did, but I need you to know I was wrong. I was selfish, and I took advantage of you. I can't take it back, but I'm going to finish paying what I owe, and I'm going to keep working. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I wanted to say it anyway." The room was still. I didn't know if the apology came from genuine remorse or the weight of legal pressure, but I could see something in her face I hadn't seen before: accountability. For the first time, she wasn't making excuses. I nodded slowly. "Thank you for saying that. I hope you mean it." That was all I could offer. Forgiveness, if it ever came, would come on my timeline, not hers. When I left that night, I felt a strange sense of peace. Not because everything was fixed, it wasn't, but because I had survived it without losing myself. I had held my ground in the face of family pressure, demanded justice, and come out stronger. Over the next year, I kept my boundaries in place. I saw my parents more often, and our relationship began to heal in its own quiet way. Tessa finished her community service and, from what I heard, kept working at the shelter even after her hours were complete. Maybe the lesson had taken root. Maybe not. But either way, I no longer felt responsible for managing her life. My story had gone from a nightmare at 2 in the morning to a warning I could share with others. And every time someone told me they'd learned something from it about financial safety, about standing firm in the face of pressure, it reminded me that the worst moments can sometimes lead to the most powerful changes. Because here's the truth, family doesn't give someone the right to hurt you without consequence. Love can coexist with boundaries. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is hold someone accountable, even if they never thank you for it. In life, betrayal doesn't always come from strangers, it often comes from the people we least expect. When it does, we have a choice: shrink into silence or stand tall in truth. I chose the latter, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. Healing isn't linear, and forgiveness isn't automatic, it's earned, day by day, through actions that match the words. My journey taught me that boundaries aren't walls to keep love out, they're doors that protect it. So if you, without apology. Hello guys, thank you for watching this story. If you enjoyed it and found value in it, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel for more powerful stories like this. And don't forget to leave a comment below telling me your perspective or the key lesson you've learned today.